we try not to differentiate between different types of data. The Burst solution in that user data tier enables the business to be able to tap into that user data tier regardless of the type of data, regardless of where that data sits, regardless of the storage format of that data, whether it's in Hadoop, whether it's in Oracle, whether it's in a relational story or a, structured or unstructured data form. The key is providing the users with that user data tier. So for us, why not? Why not put social data in there? It should be simple enough for the business to be able to capture that data and bring it into a user-ready environment, so users can see what's the impact of. I know this weekend the red, the green and the gold, or the green and the blue dress and the white and the gold dress has been going on. Why not bring that in so that you can see, does that increase the sales of dresses in H&M this weekend or next weekend? We see it, like I say, as a capability that you should be able to easily ingest into your environment. If I want to add an Excel spreadsheet to my data warehouse with birth dates in it, can I do that today in corporate? Not easily, because the data warehouse environment is somewhere that's protected. But if you've got a user-ready data tier, you can federate that data across those two sources so the users can, without damaging or impacting corporate data, they can bring in their own personal data. So that user data tier, whether it's social data, whether it's structured data, whether it's unstructured data, it should be able to provide the user with some structure to be able to go and do some analysis and visualization. Not only are we talking about data, but we're talking about humans, we're talking about governments, regulation. So I think we're some far off from this utopia that we can dream about. But logically, you and I can have the conversation of what the impact of that could be. I think when you look at from a corporate and from a government perspective, it can be a real challenge. What should be allowed out to be freely available as information? What should be kept in country, within corporation, within company? Those questions are very big questions. And to be frank, I think the technology is there right now. Companies like Burst already have the technology for you to combine multiple sources, create visualizations to impact better decisions in the hands of business. But one of the things that you've got to really be aware of is the governance of that. So I think the technology is there. I think it's then a matter of that technology having enough time for people to feel comfortable with and governments to have the right regulations to support it, especially when you look in Asia as well. You can argue some infrastructure needs, of course, still exist in Asia. In fact, they do in the world, but really, Asia in certain countries needs its infrastructure for it to be using these technologies. But the governance of it is a real challenge. So one of the great things about Burst and what it does, it manages those two worlds very well of making sure that we know who's doing what with the data. As a cloud company, we're almost paranoid. No, we're paranoid about security. So security becomes a big important factor in here. Not just security of data, but security of user and what they're doing when they're doing it. Now, we as a vendor obviously don't look at that data, but you as a customer can look at that data so that you always know who's doing what to that data. As we know, people ultimately drive business. And so the individuals that we work with as customers, the CIOs on the other side of the story, if you like, those individuals are the ones that look at cloud, look at Burst, look at big data, look at analytics, and say, what business value can we drive? How can we, as the IT department, if you like, the CIO, how can we drive and work with the business? How do we bridge the gap between the business and data? And those CIOs are very exciting for us because companies like Reckitt Benckiser at RB, a very large FMCG company, their head of BI and analytics, they chose Burst to roll out to 78 countries. They wanted to do that in a very short time period. They were very ambitious and aggressive in the way that they wanted to roll that out. So roll out BI into 78 countries, over a very short time period was very aggressive. And that's a makeup of a CIO that we find interesting in the market right now. Those ones that want to challenge the norm, work with vendors that are safe and, and are going to deliver on the promise, but really challenge the way that they see BI and big data. The traditional way of doing it is taking too long, and we've heard this story many times. The consumers want to actually, or the business want to consume data in a very different and much more agile way. We've heard this story for a long time, but the CIO plays a very important role. He's the person in these organizations, you could say maybe 10%, as much as that, of all the enterprise CIOs fit into this category, where they really understand the business. They really understand how to drive business value, because maybe they've come from the business actually, but they also understand and appreciate IT and data and how sometimes difficult that can be to integrate and provide a single view to business to be able to make better decisions. So those CIOs we're continually looking to work with. If you look at our Asia presence with people like Tata Communications, SK Telecom, Property Guru here, Zalora here in Singapore, those CIOs, they understand business and they understand data, and Burst suits them very well because it's a platform that brings that IT governance and that consumerization together. So I think it's a very good question, and those CIOs, I say the characteristics of them is that, yes, they want to challenge the norm, they understand business, they appreciate the importance of data, and obviously they understand governance and how to manage infrastructure, if you like, but the first three, I'd say, are characteristics that are much more important. Burst doesn't see software development in major release cycles as a cloud vendor, as a software as a subscription vendor. So that's the first thing, is we don't have one answer to this. We see it as a long continuum of innovation that we can rapidly deliver to customers. So that's our first problem set that we're dealing with in the R&D labs, is how do we continue to innovate iteratively, like a software as a service, rather than a major release. Every 3 years we release a new piece of code. Within that frame, a number of trends are happening in the market. How do we inline bring predictive capabilities, analytical capabilities, and how do we give that to the users? How do we bring that to the business? That's certainly one area of innovation that we're looking into right now. We have customers already doing those capabilities, but how do we make that simpler? How do we really bring that inline capability? How does mobile impact decision making? What is the relationship between mobile and decision making? That's a very big area for us, and again, got many customers deploying out on many mobile devices, dashboards and visualizations. But how do we continue to innovate in that world? How do we provide offline capability on a mobile? Those type of innovations that we see. The third area, which is a big area, is how do we make it easier for business to blend and mash data? It's almost the holy grail of BI. BI at a visualization level is relatively easy, and you could argue it's been done many times. But how do we innovate at the business? The business can combine and blend data. That's a really big area for us, and we've got a lot of exciting work coming downstream on how we improve that as a process. How do the business, number one, how do they blend and mash data in our user-ready data tier? Number two, how do they deploy that out to the edges, to everyone within the organization, mobiles, wherever they are? And number three, how do we bring more intelligent or machine-like capabilities to those business users? Our CTO always says, if they're going to attack you, they're going to attack you. So, security is something that we're constantly doing as a company. But when we come along, when we're working with large enterprise companies, the term hybrid is always in the conversation. How do we manage data on-premise as well as in the cloud? Because some data, from a sovereignty point of view, just cannot leave premise. Let alone can you, from a security point of view, have that data in our cloud. So one of the great things about Burst, that user data tier within our two-tier data strategy, is that we enable enterprise organizations to query at source. So if the data can come into our cloud, we think it's going to be easier for you. But if it can't, we'll query it at source. So we have a very simple hybrid model where some companies deploy Burst on-premise, some companies deploy them in the cloud, and some companies have a hybrid model. This hybrid model enables them to test and get some of the advantages of Burst, the BI cloud-based solution, but without compromising the governance or sovereignty challenges that the enterprise organizations are governed by today. So it's a great question. Not everyone wants to go to the cloud, but some of their data is already in the cloud, in their CRM systems or in Google. The largest media company here in Singapore is using Burst for Google Analytics, where they're combining their multiple Google Analytics accounts. But we haven't yet got around to putting their data warehouse in the cloud yet, that for obvious reasons. But I think it's a matter of time. It's a matter of time. A lot of our customers, when they're working with us, they'll do a proof of concept in the cloud with the ambition to purchase Burst on-premise and never get there. It's a governance, it's a security, it's almost like a blanket. If you're in financial services or you're in government, you're in life sciences, there's a lot of security that's beyond technical security. It is about the data rather than how secure it is. If you're in manufacturing, you're in logistics, and you're in retail, completely different frame of reference where they feel much more comfortable putting all of their data in the cloud. I was in Japan last week, and I was with the largest pharmaceutical company there in Japan. And their CIO said to me, "We have a cloud-first policy." I can reference you to a very large commercial organization here in Singapore who don't really have sensitive data. They're a real estate company, I won't go into who they are, where they had a cloud-last policy. And if you think a pharmaceutical company and a real estate company, who's got sensitive data? This one's saying cloud first, and this one's almost saying cloud last. So you've got to be able to accommodate different emotional states as well as different physical states where certain data can or cannot go in the cloud. So Burst has that capability to be able to do that hybrid model.